just checking, can anyone in chat hear me? And what the music level is like after the drama trying to get on at the moment. We've, think we've sorted out all the technical issues. Just checking to see if everything's working. Hi Jills! Hi Critical Art! Hey Freya! Just give me a sec. It's just been a bit of a stress. Initially my screen tablet, which I am going to be using today, looks like the cable had broken and I hadn't realised, so it wasn't detecting my stylus. And then when I've been trying and failing for the last half an hour to get my mirror that I use to mirror my iPad onto my computer so I can stream it, also decided that it was not going to play a game today. So we'll begin to start in a minute. I'm just going to give it a couple of minutes to see if anyone else trickles in. It will be slightly shorter now because I can't run on to past 9 o'clock this evening, but we will try and get through what we can. In the meanwhile, whilst we're waiting for anyone else to come in, if you want to pop down in chat any specific questions or anything that you've got, that'd be brilliant. Like anything that you particularly want me to cover, because I'm going to just start off with some of the basics and take it from there and see what people think. A lot of this is going to be ad-libbed, just because I didn't want to plan too much for the first time actually having to go at one of these, so you'll have to bear with me. Now. Wanna go to my channel, please? Oh, thank you, Okasira, for the follow as well. I've just seen that's popped up in chat. Brilliant. There we go. Sorry, I was just getting my tablet up and running so that I can actually see chat, because at the moment I'm down to a single screen setup, which is not ideal. So let's put that down. Alright, let's get started. So yeah, I just was going to cover some. The patrons asked last month for me to like go through drawing faces. Was going to do this last month. Unfortunately, I broke my tooth last month, and until I got a temporary filling put on, it was a bit painful to have like breath on it. So yeah, didn't go along with this. So let's just make sure I've got the right pen up and running so I can work on this. Alright. Let's go for something a bit chunkier. That's a bit easier to see. So I've not used Sai for a long while. I've been mainly using my iPad over the last year, so it's going to be interesting in the fact that I'm going to be like, I don't have it in my usual sort of brushes. So inevitably, whenever I start doing any sort of face, I go back to the bog standard sort of shape of a circle. This will help position sort of where you want eyes, nose, mouth. It's generally on the sphere. You like want a line that goes across, usually about halfway, a bit further down. This is usually sort of your eye line, but I'll probably end up dropping it because I always do a bad job of positioning stuff. So then you want to drop down from like the sphere, sort of the jawline. So depending on what you're going to do with this is a part that you'll vary a lot depending on what face shape you're wanting from whatever you're drawing. You've then got, so usually your eyes are about halfway down your head. So I'll probably put that line a bit high actually. So let's drop that down. It should be around halfway. I'll usually always put it like slightly higher. This sometimes you can vary that depending on artistic style, but usually you want to go with the basic sort of starting points of you must start with basic sort of starting points of what realistic art looks like as opposed to stylized. And then once you've kind of understand the basics, you can then move on to stylization. You don't have to be an expert at realistic. It's just helpful to get an understanding of where things should go, so it's easier for you to kind of figure out if something doesn't look right, where it's gone wrong. Okie dokie. Yeah, I have not gone back to my... I very rarely use my... I use a UG, not a Wacom, but I just use my iPad so much. I usually use a power mirror, but it's just not working, and I couldn't find anything else to use today. Alright, so you've got usually I'll use like a line about halfway there. Usually where the bottom of the circle is usually where I'll put the nose, but again, that should be like, you've got half, and then you've got a half of a half, so it's usually about a quarter down, and that's usually where you go put your nose. And then I'll usually look here for the lips. I usually have difficulty with positioning lips because I'll usually put them too far down and the face won't have a chin, which is not ideal. Again, that's like this sort of distance, and these distances will all vary depending on the different face shapes that you're trying to create, because some people have a longer nose, some people have a wider mouth, etc, etc, but these are sort of like your good key points. So at this point I'm just gonna put like a middle line on just to help with this bit. So I don't always start with eyes, I usually do the nose, and for a nose, oh, that's a bit far down. Oh, no, that's not the undo button. There we go. So for a nose basics shape, if anyone's seen my time lapses, I will almost always do like a weird trapezoid. This is sort of like to mirror, like if you feel on your nose and you feel like the shape of like your bridge of your nose, you'll feel the point where the cartilage changes to bone, and that's usually what I am using this trapezoid to sort of mark out, because of it's where there's a main shape change between like the soft fleshy part of your nose and the sort of the bridge of your nose going upwards. And this bit there isn't like a set sort of height up or down, or length. Like I could make it up here, or I could do a really small one, because of that does change a lot from face shape to face shape, because of that's determining sort of the rough shape of your nose. So if I had a character who had quite a crooked nose, like a sort of almost like a Snape nose, it might be a bit more up here. If I had someone who's doing a button nose, it might be a bit more down here. It just starts helping me to like sort of get that face shape down. I'm also absolutely hating this because I'm so used to tapping my screen to get to do undos now. Procreate has absolutely ruined me, so I'm just gonna lower that opacity down so it's a bit easier for me to draw on. Actually, let's just put the neck shape underneath. Yeah, usually your neck is roughly as wide as, not quite as wide as your head, but slightly. Depends on if you're drawing like a, how set the person is. So, alright. Usually your eyes will start from the inner corners. And usually you've got like an eye distance between your ears. And your ears will touch between the top of your eyes and your nose. So yeah, I'm just starting off with the basics, and then I'll go into a bit more how I actually draw. So we got that, and then that. Yeah, it wouldn't help that your laptop's ancient. Lucky enough, I've got quite a good rig up now, but before I got my rig, I had an old laptop which was just constantly dying and everything was lagging, and I couldn't ever use Photoshop. Do you use custom brushes on Procreate, or do you go with the default options? I actually almost always use the defaults at the moment. I at some point will probably like look at some more of like the custom brushes, but I'm quite happy with my 6B at the moment. So the sort of shapes that I'll be going here is I almost always draw eyes too big, so usually I end up having to adjust them on the fly. And for me, these are a little low down, so I might move them up. But yeah, generally there's like an eye distance between your ears and like the corner of your eyes, and from here, if you're going by the old art style, usually in the middle of your eye is where the corners of your lips will be. And like at this point, I feel like the face is very dropped down, so I might pop that up in a minute. It's just do pretty bad. That, and you've got, when it comes to sort of the eyelids, you have to remember that the eye is a sphere, not a flat circle. So you're really sort of tracing the fold of where the eye would be. And this like continues down, like even on the bottom, if you really want to draw someone who's like got really pronounced like baggy sort of eye bags. Or even when you're colouring in, if you're doing like 3D render, it's important to remember that because of essentially your eyes are spheres in a fleshy pocket. It's a bit gross thinking like that. So that's a good important thing to remember when you're doing eyelids, regardless of stylized or not. It is just a sort of top covering of part of the eye. And just eyebrows, they're really variable depending on what the person looks like. But it's good to remember, like, eyebrows are actually genuinely a lot lower than what you think you need them to be. Like, I almost always draw them too high. I usually draw my nostrils as like 2 that, so I'll do it at the bottom of this trapezoid. Then use that very bottom bit is like sort of the septum part of the nose. And then do another like sort of half moon sort of bit either side of the nose, for like sort of the edge of the nostrils. Depending on the nose shape, I might like add a little line there if it's got a defined sort of bit, or like a little ridge here. And then you've got eyebrow bones sort of coming down the edge of your eye sockets. And again, this is depending on how you want to draw a nose. You might add some more shape here if they've got a particular prominent bit. You can bring the nostrils up a lot bit higher if you wish. And I'll usually put like a little line here as part of the eye crease to sort of signify this like eye bag going on here. Usually, unless you're making a character look tired or old when you're doing line work, you usually wouldn't really put a stylization too much under the bags. So unless that's what you're aiming for, it's something you have to be careful about. Which particular brush do you use for the outlines inking? It's something I've been struggling with in Procreate. I almost always exclusively use 6B for sketching. And then when I'm working on Procreate and I'm doing ink and line work, it depends. I vary a bit between... Oh, let me just actually quickly just check on Procreate. One sec. Let me just get that up really quickly. Usually if I'm doing something more anime-esque and I need nice clean lines, I usually use a studio brush with some alterations. But at the moment, if I'm mainly using either Tinderbox or where's the other one? Because it tends to vary between Tinderbox and Syrup. Other two I will use interchangeably at times. Right, let me just get that back up. So thanks for that. So if I just pop eyes in there. So your lips, again, this is something that's quite variable depending on a character. They can have really thin lips, or they can have bigger lips. And again, this is something you want to keep in line with if depending on the ethnicity of your character. I tend to find the nose and the lips for me when I'm differentiating between sort of African descent individuals or sort of and any other race, to be fair. I find the lips and the nose are probably one of the big ones for me. Eyes, of course, are important, particularly when you're looking at Asian, particularly East Asian character faces, because of monolids. I generally struggle drawing monolids, and it's like I need to practice a bit more. But that's the thing to bear in mind when you're like drawing, is actually looking at the features, because of, you know, drawing something of different races isn't as simple as just doing a colour swap. There are stylistic things that you can include. So yeah, then got like I don't tend to do a full, unless I've got someone who's got lipstick, I won't do a full line on the bottom. I'll just do this bit here and maybe shade that in just as a kind of way of like doing a bit of shadow underneath. And it's usually at this point where I sit there and go, I've drawn the eyes too big again. Even though I've used the things you're supposed to use, it always looks a bit too big. So let's resize that. There we go, it's a bit better. And let's just select that side and resize. Oh, that's a bit better. And pull that out. Make sure that's matching. Yeah, like I said, like these guidelines that I go by are literally just a rough thing, and to be fair, most art tutorials will tell you this anyway. Let me just move that up a little bit. There we go. That feels a bit better. So let's redo those ears. This is already more complicated than my entire artistic capability. It comes with practice though. It's not something you get overnight. Like, for instance, if you'd asked me even in my early 20s, do you like drawing noses? And I'd been like, no, I hate drawing noses. I hate them completely, and I really struggle with them. And then I just drew them a lot one year, and then after then I'm like, oh, I really like drawing noses now. And now a lot of people are like, oh, I like how you draw noses. So, yeah, it's just redefine the chin. Again, the chin shape, that is going to alter depending on the character, like sort of face shape that you're wanting to give them. If they've got high cheekbones, you can tend to like just give a little bit of shape there if you want. I tend to do this more with male characters, although not always, and sometimes I use it on female presenting characters as well, but it helps give you that something that's shape. Actually, the eyes in the best. I do a lot of this where I'm like trying to readjust, going, no, there we go. I struggle with ears. I don't really want to talk too much about ears, but I'll usually just do like a little bit. I can't remember what the name is, a little knobbly bit. So this is really basic. Alright. Eyelashes I struggle with drawing in a realistic sense. Like every time I've tried to actually do realistic eyelashes, I struggle. Oh, hi stars, nice to see you. So let's just give it eyeliner. Now you can add like further creases here on the edge if you want to, and that's where you'd start putting in like lines if you're making someone a bit older. Crow's feet. Because again, like when you're making a character older, you're basically accentuating all the lines that would already be there. Sorry. Hairline. Well, it's good to remember when you're drawing a hairline that generally hairlines are not like a straight line, they are staggered. So even in a stylized piece, you want to like, you can even make like, I've seen some artists do that sort of thing as a sort of hairline. where they've like really done this sort of really exaggerated zigzag, or you can do like a dotted line, or sort of fade it in. I vary depending on what sort of style I'm working on. So yeah, that'll be sort of, that's a basic sort of thing when I'm coming down to proportions. If I'm having a real big think about it, so let's edge layers. So let's bring that down. Tell you what, let's rotate. So it gives us more room to actually draw on. And let's put this out of the way for a bit. So move that over here and do a new layer. So to put that in perspective, that is like sort of the academic terms of what you can be using to help mark it out. In realistic terms, how I actually draw, if I change the colour brush, is I'll usually just do a circle. I'll turn it into an egg shape. So if I'm going to do a 3/4 view, I'm going to put down that marker line, so you can see that I've done that like eye line, midline. Then I'll have sort of the edge of the sort of egg shape. I know the ears are going to be here, so I'll have to drop down a bit of jaw here and corner in there. So I'm doing 3/4, and like sometimes I'll extend that midline all the way up to the crown, and sometimes I'll put a cross up there because that sometimes helps me direct, like figure out where I'll put a hairline later. So on a 3/4, this is where I'm going to do that trapezoid again, but this time I'm remembering that there's a nose tip here, so this might vary depending on what sort of nose tip I'm going to give a character. So if I know it's going to be more that shape, I'll do it more like that. If it's going to be a broad sort of Snape-like nose, I'll do something more like that. Putting down the basic shapes quicker helps you sort of figure out a definition of a character's sort of design and sort of variation very quickly. And it's a good way, I find, to really help with noses. Like if I put down the shape very quickly in a very basic shape. So there's that. Again, I'll use sort of the midline for the noses. So I'll put in like a line there for the moment of just like a smile. Obviously, when it comes to eyes on a 3/4 view, it becomes a bit more difficult. I struggle with this because this is when I will struggle with one eye always looking flat. So sometimes if that's the case, I'll actually draw a sphere as if it was going in to the character's head that I can use then later on for eyes. Okay, I think I've made that a little too close. Let's just move that back and put that there. Actually, let's just put that there. It's something that will come with time and you sit there and recognise where things are in the wrong place, and sometimes even then it won't work. Obviously you've probably heard the very good trick of just flipping your canvas backwards and forwards, and like you can see on here how lopsided that face is. Like this one, so bad, but we're only using it as a practice. So it's handy where you can flip it as well, will help. Hi Dade. So if I pop that down, because that's sort of marked out where we want things to be. I've not really put in sort of cheekbones or anything yet. I've just left it as a curve. But I know if I'm going to make it do this sort of beginning, sort of the cheekbones, it's a good way to sort of think about how you want that, how that character presents with their gender, but also how feminized or masculinized you're going, because of that will help you determine the shorthand of what you want. So if I'm going to draw it as more of a feminine character, they're generally going to have a bit more fat distribution on the face. Not always the case. It depends on, you know, if you've got someone who's like a bodybuilder or something like that, they're not going to have that sort of distribution. And so it will go around at the sort of cheekbones, and then it will sink in. So if you feel on your own face, if you put your fingers to just below your eyes, you'll be able to feel your own cheekbones. And if you press down as you're going down towards your mouth, you'll feel that there is a hollow. So the hollow where between sort of your mandible and the top set of your teeth and your bottom set of your teeth are, you'll feel that there's like a suction in, which is what this curve is. And then you'll feel it go back out again when you get to your jawbone. So you'll get a bit of an outward bit there. I hope this is this sort of instructions okay. I know that this is probably a bit like not formal language. I'm like, stick it a little in, stick it a little out. So then I'll just trace it up to where the curve of the... So I can see here that I've probably pulled that jawline a little too far back. So I want to bring that forward a little bit. So I'll just put it in here. But it'll connect to the ears roughly in that shape. So here we're going to bring down from the brow. And again, you want to feel on your own face, or even look at your own face. You'll feel that your brow line then comes to your sort of where your brows are, and then it will sort of go in, which is where your eye socket is. So that's when you're going to get this sort of divot. And usually your eyebrows are around the top of this, with your eyes themselves sitting in it. So that sort of gives us where our eyebrows are going to be. So, and when you know where your eyebrows are going to be on this 3/4 view, that's where you're going to start drawing your nose coming from, because your nose starts with the center of your brow and goes down to the bridge. So it will usually taper in and then out again, but this can depend on someone's different nose shapes. It can depend on how masculine or feminine the person's face is. It's really good to like keep an eye on different references, because of that will really determine sort of how you think and approach noses. So I'm gonna give as well the typical sort of noses I give. What's handy of that trapezoid shape that I showed you earlier as well is that you can easily put the sort of figure out what angle the nose is going to be at as well. So like in this one down here, I did it sort of there, so I know that nostril is going to be there, and then that's going to be tucked sort of there. Whereas on this one, that's almost like a full halfway, so it's going to be more like that and sort of following that line there. So with the nostrils here, I'm following sort of, there's the trapezoid line sort of there. So I know that that's going to be where the corner of the nose is. That's going to be where the septum is, that bit in between. And that's going to drop down there. And this view in particular is going to hide that. So I've got the trace of the line there. So so with a 3/4 view, obviously you have one side is going to be slightly more short than the other. This is when having that eye grid helps you, because you can just drift a line down on a curve and know that that's probably where the lip's going to end. And that's going to be where that ends. And we can drop a lip under there. And you're going to want to add like a little curve there just to sort of give you that shape and that it's going around. You can, if you want, like draw a little line here, because some people do have like a very clear indentation like on the middle of their bottom lip. And then we're going to do top lip. So do that little divot. And you can, if you want, like I sometimes will, if I erase a little bit there so it's clearer, some of that guideline. You can sort of like put in that little, I can't remember the name for it, but that little like divot on the top of your lips. And again, if you want to put in like some cheekbones like we did before, but you don't want them highly defined, you can just put in a little couple of lines there if you want. You can stylistically, sometimes to help the shape, put in some lines. Like I occasionally do this, and I've seen other artists do that as well. So that's the nose. I'm gonna put like a little line there, just because sometimes you will find people have a very defined nose shape that has this sort of patterning on. A really good example is Sarah Michelle Gellar, who played Buffy. She has a very distinctive like shape to the bottom of her nose. So ears I find really hard to teach you how to draw because I still struggle with ears, but I always remember there's a knobbly bit that comes around, there's like a line that goes down but doesn't connect, and you just do like another circle behind and a few little bits, and that will do. But reference is going to be your best friend. Alright, so we've got the lips, we've got the nose. Going back to the eyes, you can see where I've got these spheres. Obviously we're not going to like draw from here to here, because otherwise we'll have someone who's like perpetually afraid. So this is when you're going to want to think about like, and this is when reference will help, is what expression you're going to give them. Are you going to give them big eyes, small eyes? How stretched open are their eyes going to be? How closed they are? This is quite a quiet smile, so I'm going to want just a normal sort of, not half hooded sort of eye, but I'm going to want somewhat lower lids. So that's where I think my lid position is going to be. And I'm just going to follow that curve of the sphere round. If it helps, sometimes drawing like an axis and like a circle and that can help you sort of really imagine it as a sphere rather than a flat circle, so you can follow it around. And then I'm just going to, again, sort of vaguely follow the lines at the bottom. I'm not going to connect up to the edge quite yet. You can also see that sphere shape. That's where we can just trace in our eyelid. And because we've done it on this side, where we've got that 3/4 view, because we've already drawn that sphere and how it's sinking into the eye, it actually makes our life a lot easier there of knowing where to put that eyelid. So you got like that. Just gonna draw the... Hello? Hello! Sorry, my cat Charlie's decided to say like, what? You just came in and yelled and decided to go away. Oh, right. Okay. I know Luna. So Luna's my other cat. Who's been a good girl and actually sleeping whilst I'm doing this, which is a change. But yeah, so I'm just going to position that. Oh. Thank you, V Clevy, for the follow. Nice to meet you. So that's a sort of rough eye shape. Now, depending on stylization, you can like add in some more lines if you want to sort of really show the shape of the sort of eye socket, or give a bit more definition. I really recommend like artists like Groove who use that in their stylization. So anyway, there we go. We've got a nice bald person. Sorry, I'm just gonna add a bit of shadow there. Alright. So eyebrows, again, depends on what your it's not who you're drawing, but like how they're presenting, features, etc. But I struggle with eyebrows, but usually what I'll do is I'll do a couple strikes in, because eyebrows aren't one block shape unless you've painted them on. And then I'll just sort of like sketch out the rest of the shape, and then maybe feather it out a little bit at the edge. But again, this will determine like depend on how you're having that character present. You might want to give them like a thinner brow or a bigger brow or a monobrow. These are all things that you can adjust to give different characters different qualities. Like, I could put on this character, hey, I'm going to put on a scar. Like, let's just erase that part. There you go, they've got a scar now. And on this side, this can become a bit harder when you're doing a 3/4 view, but if you've already started pinning out on that under sketch where the eye socket is, you just trace the top of the eye socket and follow it around. There you go. There's that. And what brush was it? Is that one? So, and then when you're moving to sort of the forehead, that will again depend on, like, it's nothing you can vary. Some people have quite short foreheads, like down here. Other people like me have quite big foreheads. Or you could have someone who's balding. So that's just put that down there. Now, I'm not going to cover hair on this one because that's what my Patreons have actually voted for this month's one, which will be next week. We'll be drawing actual hair. So I'm probably going to be mainly sticking to bald people today. So that's how I approach 3/4 views. Which, if you follow me on Twitter, is very quickly evident that that is my favourite way to draw. Almost always drawing 3/4 views. So, alright, let's move that up. So I'm just gonna move that. I'm just gonna change that track. I don't want scary music on in the background. Actually, let's just change that. Alright, so let's move that up out of the way. And right. Profile views I absolutely hate with a passion. This is why I do not draw them very often. I don't like them and I struggle drawing them. So I would not suggest you follow how I draw them. But I can go through how I draw them. Okay. So I'll start off with a sphere again. And then I'll again drop down that curve. Now you can see here that I'm already I've done a straight line and I'm doing a curve. That's because largely your face does have that sort of dome shape. You go you feel from where your forehead is, your face slopes down towards your nose and then it comes back in again. It's not usually that pronounced, but it helps sort of figure out what you're going to do with it. Again, we've got that bottom of that circle is usually around where the ears are. So we know that the jawline's going to be about there. So drop that down. I always struggle with jaw placement. I always want to make the jaw further back than it actually is. But it's roughly where the ears would be. So there. And your eyes are going to be roughly about there. Alright. So fade that down. Actually, before I do that, start pinning on the eyes. And then we can do our trapezoid here again. So for this time, you're going to be really defining how you want that nose tip to be with it. I think that looks about right. And that's roughly where the mouth is going to be. The final thing that I struggle on profiles, I want to bring the smile all the way back, but actually it's going to end probably about there. Because your jaw goes further back than where your mouth actually is. It goes quite a way back. So, we've got that. Let's fade, just alter that opacity down. Add a new layer. It's going to darken that slightly. Alright. So this is when we're going to start again, just sort of trying to figure out where we're putting stuff and refining. So I'm going to start with the brow bone. Bring it down. Now I know that the eye socket's about here, so we're going to have that bit like we did with the 3/4 view, where that brow's going to dip in. And then it's going to slope out. And again, you've got that point where it switches from fleshy to hard. From hard to sort of that bone to cartilage. And that's something just to bear in mind, because that's where you're going to alter, like, where if you're going to start adding like a round nose, it'll start from that point. Because that's where you'll start getting more of the flesh growing. So I'm just going to curve that under. Eyes are going to sort of there, right end about there. So in this case, I'll usually do a nostril where I've got a line slightly going out, which is the shape, whereas the circle is sort of the shadow of the hole. There we go. So where the mouth is, this is the bit that I really struggle with looking right. So you'll have the initial curve down, which is sort of that weird sort of divot on the top of your lip. And it will go out to lips. This is going to vary a bit depending on how thick and full the person's lips. If they're full, it's going to be quite a big sort of shape. If they've got quite a thin lip, they might not have much at all. It may just be that. And like if someone's got quite old, they're likely to have thin lips. Alternatively, again, when we're getting into racial, if you're doing someone who is of black heritage, they're probably not always going to have bigger, thicker lips. Not always, but they will have usually have bigger, thicker lips. And that's something to bear in mind when you're drawing. So I'm just gonna tuck the smile in there. Then at the line where you're separating your top and your bottom lip. Usually this doesn't go out as far as your top lip, but not by much. And then you've got another divot in, and then you'll have your jawbone. And again, you can see where the lip ends here, but I'll usually add like a little bit there just to give a bit more shadow. And then again, a really terrible ear. Eyes are the bit I struggle with the most. So we've got the curve of the eye, of where the eyeball is. And usually if we've got someone who's quite relaxed, I'll take just a straight line of where their eye is, of like the top of their eye line, and then I will slant down the bottom one. Because again, you've got this sphere sort of shape. And usually the bottom of that line, that bottom line that's swooped with, will turn a little bit into like the tear duct. When you've seen the rest of my artwork, this is when lines can actually come in handy with like adding some more depth to a flat sort of side view. So usually I'll put a little bit here, which is just sort of the same bubble that we put up there, which is the sort of raised bit around your tear duct. You can, if you want, put in a little couple lines here which help with the cheekbone, like where your cheeks are. I don't tend to do it because I never seem to get them in the right place, and I can never get it looking right myself. But you can put in like some jaw definition or sort of some cheekbone definition. If you've got a character that is very starved and emaciated, this is the bit that you can really like accentuate. On a side view is also when you're going to maybe put in a little bit about that bottom eyelid as well, just so it doesn't look flat and makes it look like it's sat in the socket. So I'll usually put in like a little trim. And then up here you've got that same sphere, so you can, this is when you're doing your like lid, you want it to join the line, just like the corner, but you want a nice little curve up. What I'll also do, just to add a bit more depth, is just to bring a little curve, like little line off here, which helps like sort of show the, begin to show the shape of the eye socket. This is where I really hate doing it, as I hate drawing the sort of iris and pupil. I'll usually just do like a sort of, if I've got a big zoomed out way, if I've got that, we'll just do that sort of shape, sort of a long oval. That is a stylized way of doing it. So an actual shape of an eyeball, and this is where it is important to actually know how an eye looks, is that if you're taking the shape of an eye, it isn't a pure sphere. So if you've got the optic nerve there, you've got your main eyeball. Is actually that the iris cornea, well, mainly the cornea, sticks out from the edge. It's a little bubble. I just draw it straight onto the sphere like I have on this one, but that's just something to be aware of and keep in mind, particularly if you're doing more of a realistic piece. So I know that this is where that circle indicates where the eye socket is. So eyebrows probably not going to start right at the edge, but there's going to be a little bit of a gap, and I can sort of mark out where I want the eyebrow. Eyebrows tend to finish in and around near the corner of your eye, so you can use that to sort of help yourself out there with marking that out. And then I'm just going to bring that up backwards. I tend to draw the cranium, so the edge, the back of the skull sort of blends in to the corner of the jaw there. I always struggle putting on necks because I always get the proportions wrong. But there you go. So there's that. I have a little bit of shadow there for a sec. Alright, so that's the basics of how I draw faces. Now we've got probably another 20 minutes before I need to go. So I'm gonna open it up to those in the chat. Like, what is there anything else you want me to cover? Like, is there anything else you'd like to see me draw in regards to faces? Let's move that in the meanwhile. I can cover a little bit of expressions, or do you want me to go for like variations? Can you show us how different kinds of eyes and ears? I'm probably not the best person to ask about ears, unless you're talking about different sort of like D&D race ears. And what do you mean by like different types of eyes? Is it eye shape, or like you're talking about different species eye shapes? If I just take those off for a second. What I'll do is, if we're talking about eye shape, like normal eye shapes, I say normal, so human eye shapes, if I draw a sphere and draw an eyeball in the middle, there we go. I played that out. God, these look like those eyes from that hockey mascot. Oof, creepy. Okay, let's merge that down. Alright. So as a quick one, briefly on human eye shapes, if you're zooming in, you can do different sort of... generally you're going to be working from 2 different points, which is, say, your inner eye to your eye, and the position of those can vary depending on different people. Just look at different references, and that will help you sort of begin to recognize different shapes. The other thing is like where the top of the lid peaks may vary, so you could have a curve begin there and then taper down, or it could be further down, say here. So if I take this one and it's here, so I could be like, okay, it's gonna slope up on a, like, originally on a curve like this, and then even out, and then curve the opposite direction when it gets to about the top there. And then I'm gonna have this one slope down there. And then you can do the same again, like you have like a point where it'll be its lowest. So let's just pop it there. I tend not to like match the corners up completely unless I've got a character of eye makeup, because there's actually a little bit of a fold here where your top eyelid overlaps your bottom one. So just pop that in. But on the turn side with the same one, if I put a point there and a point here, but top point there and low point there, we will get that sort of shape. So that might be more someone who's got like a monolid rather than a deep set eyelid. So that's how I sort of, when I'm trying to do different eye shapes, I might go that if I'm going for like my more realistic. But you can simplify this down like when you're quickly sketching a character. So if you've seen like one of my time lapses, I'll just literally do something like this. So I might do just a shape like that just to nail it down, but I've already done like a simplified version of one of those, like deciding where the peak net's going to be. But that's the main way you can sort of think of like when you're drawing a face, if you're doing something a bit more complicated. Show us how to do different kinds of eyes and ears, like different elves and stuff and species. I'm not very good as someone who doesn't really do a lot of I do a lot of humanoid work rather than different races and species. But the main ones I've done are probably cats and... Hello baby, can you model for me for a second so I can have a look at you? Yeah, I'll go right. The main thing is to remember with a lot of species is that they don't really have the sclera, which is this part of the eye. They don't really have much of that. So like on a cat, you get like more like their double eyelid in on the side here and here. But then this is all pupil. Like that will all be pupil. And then you've just got mainly, not pupil, all the iris, and then you've got the bit which is middle, which is pupil. Which for a cat, it depends on the time of day and how much light. So if you've got a cat that is a bit shocked, their eyes might be very thin, slit light. I mean, they can go as thin as like literally that. But when they're nice and relaxed, their eyes will go very big. And the pupil will literally take up almost their entire eye. But yeah, the main difference with cat ones is at least really they don't have a sclera. They might have a little bit in the corners here, but predominantly almost their entire sort of the part of the eye that we see is pupil. Not pupil, iris. Get my biology mixed up. So that's the main thing I found with doing cat eyes. Again, their shape of their eyes is also a lot, whereas humans can be sort of an almond on like its sort of long axis like that. I find cat eyes are a lot more, not spherical, but more almond and higher. It's almost like a cross section of an almond as opposed to a long section of an almond. So it's more of a shape like that. I haven't really drawn many lizards or anything like that, so I wouldn't speculate to say on those sort of things. But namely when I've done like more, like when I've done tabaxis and things like that, that's the sort of eyes you're looking at if you're not going for human eyes. Alright, so okay, so different kinds of ears. This is so, oh gosh, what have I done there? Oh, just if I hit my keyboard, I don't know. Alright, so when we're talking about ears, usually normal human ear, we've got again that egg shape. I tend to put like a flat side on one side. I don't know all the technical terms for this as I would for the eye. So, and you've got like the beginning like hooky arch bit that we have on the top. that will tend to peter out as you get to the edges there. You then have the little knobbly bit that curves round under, and then with the ear, I'll usually put some dashes here because of like the edge of your ear, like the hard ridge will then slowly morph into your earlobe. Another thing to remember is that people have detached and non-detached earlobes, so that gives you an important variation. Yeah. I'll then put maybe one little divot here and one little divot here, which is for more of the cartilage shape that you get on sort of the shell of your ear. Maybe putting like a little there. When I'm dealing with elf ears, depending on what style of elf ears, if I'm doing something that's more, I suppose, Lord of the Rings elf, it'll be the same shape. So if I copy and paste that, edit, copy, edit, paste, and just put that over here, and just let's take that opacity down. What I usually do if I'm doing with a Lord of the Rings sort of ears, I'll just take the point up. This also works if you're doing like Vulcans or something like that. Is that you're almost starting to lead that edge up to a point, and then you'll extend this arch up into that point and then down, and you're basically then following similar rules that you had before to the ear. You might want to take it even more and do it even more up that way. That's if you're going for more of a Lord of the Rings sort of approach. Where you have the tip coming from will depend on where you sit stylistically. So, and how much of a curve here. Like you can just have it like go straight up like that, and rather it being a little like flick nubbin, you have it just a straight archway up. If I'm doing something like one of my tiefling ears, these are usually, I do a lot bigger. I usually do like a slight curve and almost like got a wing shape for their ear. So I'll take a sweeping curve up, and again, just following that top ridge up to get to the corner point, and then you'll have like a little bit of an overlap up there. Down here, have that little ear nubbing event and the circle. And then you, again, just follow that down and then edge it out. And then to give it a bit more depth, I'll usually put in a number of these like ridges. But again, I mainly work on sort of humanoids. If I'm doing something like a Makote from Final Fantasy 14, which are hard to draw because their ears aren't like, when we're talking about most sort of cat people ears, they put their ears at the front like this, little triangles. But like in the case of the Final Fantasy 14, they actually have the ears sort of kind of going back a little bit and a bit longer. And usually in that case, what I do with these is like where you see I've drawn that circle, like I can use it sometimes to sort of make a triangle to go, okay, that's where the opening of the ear would be. I'm just putting a little few tufts of it further. If you're going to do like a Makote sort of ear, they're actually quite simple most of the time with sort of animal ears, in regards to like them being like furry ones, is that they're just like furry triangles. Oh, excuse me. So, is that all the species? So have I covered that sort of bit that you guys wanted? Chat, is that kind of what you were looking at? Because I never know. Alright. Let's merge those down. No. There, measure layer. And take that down. Hi, Lady Valiant. Not Valiant. What's Valiant? Hi, Lady Valiant. Nice to see you. Hi. So yeah, that's the ears and that and eyes. Is there anything else? Oh, we've got about 8 minutes before I've got to finish. Oh. For the evening. I apologise, I'm probably going to sneeze in a second. Bless me. Sorry about that. I wasn't quite sure what was coming or going with that one. But yeah, is there anything else you guys would like before I shut down? Okay. I'm trying to think what else to put in this because I wasn't sure how far to go in depth with that. So we've done eyes, done ears. I suppose we can do a little bit quickly on lips. So if I go here, when I'm drawing lips, it's a bit more of a complicated shape than some other parts. Again, you've got like, your baseline, your corners, then you've got your midline. A good way to remember when you're doing lip structure, if you're doing something a bit more realistic, is you've got 2 balls up top and 1 ball below. That'll give you your sort of where the sort of divot line is on the lips, and then you follow the curve down to that bit. And that gives us sort of a good shape to work with at the beginning. And you can use that sort of idea to sort of help you mark out different shapes of lips. So if I do another one, and I'll give it really sort of pronounced big sort of lumps. That'll give a different sort of shape. So this one ends up being a lot more round. And sort of the shape diminishes up top. Some people don't really have a very clearly marked divot. So if you're doing something stylistically, you could have that sort of shape. Bit like Amethyst from Steven Universe is always how I remember this one. So yeah, that's how I'll do sort of those lips. Again, if you've got thin lips, you could do like a really long ones. And it gives you sort of that one. So yeah, great. Unless there's anything else that anyone wants, I'm probably going to sign off for the evening. So I'll give you guys like a minute to sort of submit any more requests, and if not, we'll just call it that. If we don't get anything else, I hope this has been helpful. I'd be really encourage people who've participated to, if you want, leave me a tweet or a comment, just so that I get any feedback that you've got for it would be great. Because I would like to do more of these, but I like doing things in a way where it is a bit more, not informal, but a bit more you're able to give more sort of feedback indirectly at the time. Almost like a bit of a back and forth, like asking questions and such. As opposed to me just sitting here going, this is how I draw. I'm just going to explain it. Yeah. Alright, well, in which case, I'm going to sign off. Thank you ever so much, guys, for coming, and I'll hope to see you guys next time. See you later. Bye!